and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I want to go over another interview that the Cal City Police Chief did from his office with Bayan Wang from 23 ABC News. This interview is more extensive than the other interview I discussed in a recent video I did, and we got some more information from the police chief than he gave before about the missing boys, Orrin and Orson West. I found this interview on the YouTube channel DutyRon. That's all one word, DutyRon, which I've shouted out in the past, and it was posted on the interviewer's Facebook page called Bayan Wang on January 21st of 2021. I'm going to share my thoughts on some of the things the police chief said and some of the things he didn't say. So, thank you to DutyRon for sharing this interview out, and let's get to it. I believe Bayan Wang said it was a 30-minute interview, so I'm not going to go over all the questions asked and answered, just the ones I feel need to be discussed. I will link to the interview video on DutyRon's channel if you want to watch it in its entirety. I'm going to start 6 minutes into the interview, when Wang asks if the adoptive parents' car was towed after the boys went missing. Chief answers yes. Wang asked if luminol was used on the vehicle. Chief answers yes. Was there any sign of blood in the van? Chief answers no. Wang asks the purpose of using scent dogs on the home during the initial search. Chief says it's to pick up the scent of the boys in the home. Once they get the scent of the kids in the house, then they widen their search. But the dogs picked up no scent of the kids outside of the house, which doesn't necessarily mean anything in particular, but it leads us to believe that the kids did not wander outside of the house. But that's not 100%. But, he repeats, the dogs did not detect their scent outside of the house. And what did he just say a moment ago? It leads us to believe that the kids did not wander outside of the house. In my opinion, if the children did not wander outside of the house, then who were they in the home with? Trezell and Jacqueline. So in my mind, at this point, the chief is saying that he doesn't believe the boys were ever outside, as Trezell said, and he isn't buying his story. But he smooths it over with, but that isn't necessarily 100%. Then Wang drives it home by saying these dogs are fully trained for this, correct? Chief answers correct. In my opinion, so no reason not to trust the dogs. Wang says, there was no extreme wind that day. Did you find that alarming or of interest? Chief answers, of course, of course. In my opinion, there was nothing to throw off any scent that may have been there. Again, no reason not to trust the dogs. Wang asks if there have been any positive sightings of the boys from anyone other than the adoptive parents, anywhere other than Cal City, before they went missing. Chief answers, in Bakersfield, the grandmother. Wang asks, so the grandmother confirmed a specific date she saw the boys? Chief answers, yes. Wang asks, when was that? Chief answers, I'm not going to disclose that. Wang asks, has anyone other than family positively identified the boys in Bakersfield? Chief answers, yes. Wang asks, can you disclose that date to me? Chief answers, no. Wang asks, for people watching this who want to know why you can't disclose that, what is the reason? Chief answers, because those are significant dates, and we don't want people to start speculating, again with the rumors. Well, they saw them on this date, but they didn't see them on that date, so it must mean that this is what happened. And that's not true, he said. So, we want to keep those dates close to the vest, and those people as well. To me, this was a very telling answer. Why would he be concerned that people may speculate about the case based on the last dates the boys were supposedly seen? What does that matter? We're speculating anyway. We're speculating because we're getting no answers. So, Wouldn't good, solid answers end the speculation? The police aren't running their investigation based on our speculation. So what do they care what we think? They don't. It was a BS answer. He doesn't care what we think. But listen to what he says. He says, well, they saw them on this date, but they didn't see them on that date. So it must mean this is what happened. And that's not true. How does he know what we would think? How does he know that we would come to a conclusion that is not true? The only way he would know that is if the dates he was given made him come to the same conclusion as he knows we would. Because something's not right about them. Something's fishy about the date or dates he was given. Maybe by the grandmother. Because he's basically saying, if I give you the dates, you're going to form the same conclusion I did. But I already know it's not correct because I checked it out, or it is correct, and it would give away his person or persons of interest. And he isn't ready to do that yet, so he's protecting it, keeping them close to the vest and those people as well. He doesn't want to raise suspicion. He doesn't want to point fingers just yet. Again, just my opinion. Wang asks, if a third party looks at this case, it leaves me to ask or to say that there is a focus on one part of the investigation that's on the parents, correct? Chief answers, of course. So with that, have there been any suspects named in this case so far? Chief answers, no. Wang asks, any persons of interest at this point? Chief answers, of course. Wang asks, who? Chief, I can't disclose that. Wang asks, person or persons of interest? Chief answers, I won't disclose that either. Wang asks, anyone detained since these kids went missing? Chief answers, no. Wang verifies that the parents have been questioned, then asks if questioning is synonymous with interrogating. Now, I found this part interesting. The chief answers no. Then Wang, who I'm loving more and more by the second because he's so thorough, except I would have loved if he had asked the questions about the children in the home and whether or not they had been questioned. He asks, what's the difference? Then the chief says, again, you're splitting hairs. My opinion? Yes. Basically, we interrogated them, but in a way that appeared to be just questioning. Why? Because Wang just asked him if they were the same thing, and he answered no. Then, when asked to explain the difference, then he says there's very little difference between the two. He's splitting hairs. Then he goes on to say that interrogation is more of, I know you know this, and I want to know this information. Where what they did with the parents was more informative for the police. In other words, we don't want them to think we suspect them. Then he finishes with, can they be synonymous? Sure. But earlier when asked, he answered no. He's walking a fine line, trying to sugarcoat the truth, while trying not to appear stupid at the same time, in my opinion. Wang asks if the adoptive parents have come in for questioning every time they've been asked to. Chief answers yes. Wang asks, and the nature of all those was questioning? Chief answers, yeah, follow-up questions. You know, because we're still trying to find your kids, but we didn't ask you this last time or that. Because we're still trying to find your kids. Say I'm reaching, but this statement struck me. Of course they know you're trying to find the kids. Why the reminder? As if he's saying, don't worry, we're on this. We're just trying to help you. We believe you. We don't suspect you at all. If they just had follow-up questions, couldn't they have called the parents? Or gone to wherever they're staying to ask them? I know they said they took their phones, but they had to have a way to reach them to ask them to come in for questioning. So, why did it have to be done in person? Could it be that they wanted to judge the reactions to the questions? Maybe split them up to see if their answers would be the same? Maybe judge their body language? Maybe judge how well they were holding up? Seeing if one was maybe turning on the other as time progressed? But don't worry, we're just trying to find your children. Then he gives examples of questions they asked, like, were you with them here? Were you with them there? He says it's to narrow the scope of their investigation. Then he gives the answer I was looking for. Hopefully, with their cooperation. Bingo, and there it is. Are you still cooperating with our investigation? Again, you can say I'm reaching, but if they're completely innocent in his eyes, why would they not cooperate with the investigation? Why would he say hopefully with their cooperation? Why wouldn't they cooperate? If they did nothing wrong and they aren't suspects, why wouldn't they cooperate? Of course, any loving, concerned parent is going to cooperate to help recover their child. That goes without question. So, why does he have one? Could it be that in his 30 years of police experience, he's learned that over time, guilt sets in and people get nervous? Does he know that the more he calls them in for questioning, the more they're going to start thinking they're suspects? And maybe start backing off and not be so cooperative? And maybe even lawyer up? Is he maybe anticipating that at some point they won't be cooperative anymore and they will go on the defense? He knows they need to appear cooperative to not look suspicious. But maybe they're getting less and less forthcoming with helpful information. Just thinking out loud. Wang asks, are lie detector tests a useful investigative tool? Chief answers yes, but they're not admissible in court. But they are a good tool, he says. Sure. Wang asks if California law enforcement can ask anyone in any case to take a lie detector test. Chief answers yes, but it's completely voluntary. In my opinion, to send the message that it's okay if you don't want to. This will matter later. But the chief sees where Wang is going with this line of questioning ahead of time, so he covers his bases. Wang asks, in what types of cases would you ask someone to take a lie detector test? Chief answers, cases like this. I love the next part. Even though I already knew the answer because I learned it on the YouTube channel Crenshaw Incorporated, who is all over this case, by the way. But Wang asks the chief if the adoptive parents were asked to take a lie detector test. Chief answers, I'm not going to disclose that. Wang then says, not asking if they denied it, just asking if it was, and before he can even finish his sentence, the chief jumps in and says, yes, we did. Then Wang asks, and you can't tell me anything after that? Chief answers, no. It was an interesting exchange between the two. The chief knew the question was coming, so in my opinion, he decided to answer in favor of the parents, as if making an effort to protect them and their privacy. So, initially he said he wasn't going to answer that. 2 points. But he's dying to, because it goes to the heart of the investigation. Are the adoptive parents cooperating with the investigation? So, when Wang comes back with not asking if they denied it, just asking if, and before he gets too far past not asking if they denied it, Chief jumps in with yes, we did. Because he wants to say it. Because he knows no information has been released that they passed a lie detector test. So, since there would be no reason not to announce that each of the adoptive parents passed a lie detector test, clearing them as suspects, We have to conclude, from what he tells us, that they were asked to take the tests, but refused. Or maybe the results came back inconclusive, or they failed, meaning that they would be the persons of interest he was referring to. But, from what I learned on Crenshaw Incorporated's channel, who knows the bio mom of the boys, Trezell and Jacqueline were asked to take the polygraphs, and they refused. Now, make of that what you will, but, as I stated in my earlier video, when I covered Trezell and Jacqueline's interview, they made it clear that they were fully cooperating with the police to help find their boys, and they understood that they would be looked at for any involvement they may have had first. Well, I would think that taking a polygraph when asked to by the police would be an excellent way to prove that you're telling the truth, had no involvement in the boys' disappearances, and to clear your name. Why go on letting people suspect you if you're innocent? I'm sure it hasn't been fun for them. Especially since 2 YouTube channel creators, Crenshaw Incorporated and AV Watchmen United We Stand, have joined forces out in California to get answers and put the heat on the West family. If you're interested in following the incredible work they're doing, I suggest you follow their channels. They're keeping us updated about the searches they're conducting and the reactions of Trezell and his father when they're asked to help with finding the boys. Guys, you'll be shocked. I know I was when I watched it. When they were asked to help find the boys, they had zero reaction. Nothing. Nada. Niente. They offered no information and didn't even thank the searchers for everything they were doing to find the boys. It was very eye-opening. As if we need our eyes open anymore in this case. And just real quick before I forget, there's a GoFundMe called Find the Boys from Cal City, Orrin and Orson, that is raising funds to help pay for gas and other essentials needed for the work AV Watchmen is doing on this case, if you're interested. Okay, back to the interview. So, when Wang asks, "And you can't tell me anything after that?" the chief says no. Then just sits there like, do I really need to? He knows he made his point, loud and clear. 'Cause gosh, up until now, he's been more than happy to appear to be in the adoptive parents' corner. So why wouldn't he just jump at the chance to clear their name? Because he can't. Then Wang asks about the other children and where they are. The chief says the way he understands it is that the Wests have 2 biological children, 2 foster children, and the 2 adopted children, Orrin and Orson, and they range in age from 10 down to 3. Wang asks, where are the kids now? The chief says, the 4 children are in foster care. Wang asks, so they aren't with family members? The chief says, no, they are in foster care. Think of the irony in that. They were taking in foster kids. Now their own children are in foster care. Wang asks if there was any proof of abuse or neglect with the other children in the home that they found during their investigation. The chief takes a deep breath and says, I'm not going to comment on that, which to me is a yes. It certainly was not an emphatic no, which it would have been if there wasn't any abuse or neglect found, because again, he would appear to be sticking up for the adoptive parents. Then, Wang asks if police are aware of the surveillance footage out there, and the chief responds with, there's surveillance footage from the neighboring homes. That's correct. Now, we know we saw the surveillance footage from a neighbor's home that I told you AV Watchman showed on his channel from the night the Wests claim Orrin and Orson went missing. So, we know the chief has to be aware of it. And if you saw the video footage, then you saw Trezell stand in his front yard while waiting for the police, instead of running around looking for his boys. Hell, he didn't even look in the big open field next to their home. and Jacqueline was never seen outside looking for the boys, as she claimed to be in their media interview. So, I would assume the chief knows all this as well. Then Wang says, "And you weren't able to disclose what's on that film, correct?" Chief answers, "Correct." Now, if there was nothing concerning on this surveillance footage, why wouldn't he be able to disclose that? He could. He could say that they found nothing useful in any of the footage, but he doesn't. Wang asks, "So, can you comment on how many children were captured on the surveillance videos from the home? Was it 6 or 4? The chief says he's not going to comment on that because, once again, it's going to cause speculation, which we already learned earlier in this interview is a no-no. That's why he can't give us dates or anything, because we just won't leave well enough alone. In my opinion, 6 children caught on video would not cause speculation, because they're supposed to be 6. So, I'm correcting the chief's answer to 4. You're welcome." Then Wang asks the chief what stands out to him that he wants people to know. The chief answers, "People think we should be doing certain things, when in fact we're probably already doing them. They think we should search certain places, when we've probably already searched them." "That's okay," he said. "People can speculate." Whoa, 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 whoa! Baby got put in the corner earlier for speculating. Now it's okay? I thought we couldn't be trusted with the dates the boys were last seen because we'd just speculate. And we'd be wrong. But now we can speculate. It's fine. I'm starting to think I was incredibly accurate when I called BS on that earlier answer. But then the chief redeems himself by saying that even though he believes foul play is involved, he doesn't believe the boys are dead. He said his portion of the investigation is to figure out how the kids got out of that backyard. He says it's a big backyard, it's well fenced in, and from the timeline that the dad says that they went missing until we arrived on scene, how far could they have gone? Then he recovers with, "On their own." Wang asks him if he questions if the boys were ever even in that backyard. The chief answers, "We have to question everything, of course." Wang asks if there are any leads that the boys were kidnapped. The chief takes a huge deep breath, pauses, then says he's not going to comment on that. He says, "Because I don't want to give you a bad answer, because that's a pretty loaded question. If someone took them out of the yard, then yeah, that would mean they were kidnapped. In my opinion, I'm not going to answer that because I don't want you to think I mean kidnapped by a stranger. I don't want to give you a bad answer, because if I say yes, you'll think I mean by a stranger. Because that's a pretty loaded question, because parents kidnap their children too. If someone took them out of the yard, then yeah, they were kidnapped. We believe Trezell or Jacqueline or both did something with them. So yeah, you could call it kidnapped if you want to." Then the chief says, "But the reward money is up to $100,000 and no one has come forward yet." My opinion? Because Trezell and Jacqueline can't come forward to claim the money, even though they know where the boys are. Then Wang asks if the boys could be being trafficked. The chief answers, "It's always a possibility, yeah." Again, that goes back to semantics, he says. Were they kidnapped? Kidnapped means moving them from one place to another against their will, somewhere they didn't want to go. In my opinion, hence the "I don't want to give you a bad answer," and "that's a loaded question" statements. Because technically, the boys probably weren't moved against their will to someplace they didn't want to go. They were probably told that they were going somewhere fun, so they went willingly. And if they went with their parents, then technically they weren't kidnapped. Hell, They could have been carried out of the home in the middle of the night while they were sleeping. So, loaded question. But that explains why the highly trained dogs did not pick up the boy's scent outside the home. They were either never at the home, or they were carried out to the van. So, no scent to pick up. Then Wang asks, "Is there any physical evidence you found that indicates foul play?" The chief answers, "As far as DNA or bloody clothing? Because physical evidence can be a security cam. Maybe." In my opinion, he regrets saying that. So, he follows up with, "No." Wang asks, "Circumstantial evidence. How much of that do you have?" Chief answers, "I'm not going to comment on that." Then Wang asks if Jacqueline and Trezell have been asked not to leave California. Chief answers, "We never asked them that. We only ask them to be available if we need to talk to them." In my opinion, they're waiting to see if they lead them to the boys out of state, or try to flee the state. If the other children were with their grandmother, then they could have used someone's car to travel out of state in the days between the time they dropped off their kids at the grandmother's and the day they reported Orrin and Orson missing. Just a thought. Then they discussed some more places the police searched, and the chief said they're doing all they can to find the boys. I think Bayan Wang did an excellent job in this interview. He asked some really, really good questions and really dug deep to make sure he was getting the answers he was looking for. My interpretations of the chief's answers are only my interpretations from what I know to be true in this case and from what I think the chief was wanting to say. My opinions, of course, are not facts, and you may agree or disagree with them. All I ask is that if you disagree, that you do it in a respectful manner, and I will as well in my response. I always learn a great deal from your comments, views, and opinions, and I'm open to hearing them, even if they differ from mine. That's how we learn, from looking at all sides, from entertaining opposing opinions, and from keeping our minds open to new thoughts and views. As always, I will be praying for the boy's safe return very soon. Thank you so very much for watching, and thank you to all the YouTubers who are working hard on this case and are sharing out updates with us. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you on my next video.